YouTubers, I want to welcome you to another edition of Bargain Bin Gear. And in this episode, we're going to take a look at how to get a really big sound out of tiny little tube amps. Okay? And as an example here, I've got two Bugera T5 5-watt little tiny tube heads. You can see them here. Okay, look at this. Wow. Well, I recognize this. This is the Bugera T5 5-watt head. And it's so tiny. My goodness. It's heavy, but it's tiny. Look at this. You got your input jack, gain, fat switch, treble, bass, reverb built in. Alright. So that's a pretty big sound really out of it. So what's my secret to getting this big sound? Okay, now to give you an example, here's the Bugera 5-watt amplifiers running through a Vox 12-inch cabinet. Okay, and here's what it sounds like. That sounds okay, you know, considering they're 5-watt little amps. But if you want a bigger sound, here's one way to achieve that. Okay, now let's compare that to this sound. Right, same amps. Much bigger, richer sound. So how am I getting this big sound out of these little tiny amps? And I'll divulge my secret here. And that is with the addition of a bass amp. That's right, you know, bass amp. Oh my goodness. Here we go. Looks like this is going to require an unboxing. Please don't try this at home. Only trained professionals should attempt. Okay. There's a smell in the air, and I think it's complimentary candy as well. Let's find out. Okay, very good. Hold on a second. There we go. Let's get this side. Okay. And here we go. Happy New Year Day. A Sweetwater sticker included here. Very nice. Ah, here it is. Look at it. Unbelievable. Complimentary candy. So much better than regular candy. Wow, look at this. Ah, there it is. I see it. A bit of honey. Dad's root beer, some Laffy Taffy. Oh, we got some Smarties here. Smarties! Okay. So there, we're in business. Now, what do we have here? It's a Fender box. Oh, boy. A Fender Rumble 15, I believe. Okay. Wow, look at this. Boy, this is brand spanking new. Okay. There it is. Look at this. Holy smoke. There's a little tiny thing. Oh, it's quite light, actually. Wow. Look at this. Holy smokes. Little Fender 15. And actually for a 15, it's pretty darn small. I'm quite impressed. Considering it's a bass amp. And here are the controls. We've got a volume, a bass, mid, and treble. Pretty simple. Fender Rumble 15. My goodness. I was wanting a small bass. There it is. This is the back of the amp. Wow. So there it is. It's actually quite small. I'm really impressed though. And I think these were like less than $100. So if it provides any bass at all, I'd be really impressed. Especially for the price. And when you include some Easy Pay in there, well, you're all set. And let's not forget the complimentary candy, which was worth the price alone. So much better than regular candy. Okay, so I'm looking forward to that. Now here I'm using a crossover, that splits the low end going to the bass amp and the rest of the guitar signal going to the guitar amps. However, you don't necessarily have to use a crossover if you're quite careful with your guitar speakers. And the reason is, a guitar speaker is not meant to handle a bass kind of sound. So that's why you would use a bass amp. However, what I discovered is that besides that, a bass amp can be really handy for handling the low end of a guitar signal. Let's say I'm playing, I don't know, and I'll loop that right now. Turn off the bass amp. Where'd the big sound go? So now with the bass amp on, bass line. Turn off the bass amp. Where'd the low end go? So as you can hear, the bass amp makes a huge difference. In fact, I don't know if you remember, about, 10 years ago, the Bose had their satellite system, and it consisted of these little tiny speakers and a subwoofer. right? Well, this is the same idea, right? You basically have a bass amp handling the low end, and then the little tiny tube amps acting as satellites, playing pretty much the high end. And what I discovered is that makes a huge difference, right? Without the bass amp, it really does sound puny. The little 5-watt guitar heads there. But when you add the bass amp, it sounds much larger. Now, here's the thing. I wanted a setup that was quite compact, small, right? And those little Bulgara 5-watt lunchbox heads are perfect for that. They're very tiny, yet it's the full-fledged tube amp with reverb. So I wanted a bass amp to complement that and to be just as small. Unfortunately, right now I'm using a 12-inch cabinet, right? Because I have some little orange cabinets coming. They're much smaller, right? And so I wanted a bass amp that would be similar to that, that was small and harder to find, most definitely. So here you've been listening to the Fender Rumble 15, right? It's a 15-watt bass amp, and it's small. In fact, it reminds me very much of the Crate GX15. Remember those? Little tiny solid-state amp. It's about that size. It's actually very small. And I believe it has a 8-inch speaker. And these can be had for about $89 new. Right, so very inexpensive. And what they can do for a small little tube head, or little tube amp if you like, little 5-watt tube amp, is quite amazing, really. Now, keep in mind, when the Fender Rumble's small, has an 8-inch speaker, so don't expect gigantically thunderous bass sound. That's not the idea. However, it has plenty enough bass to complement a small tube amp, right? And really handle the low end, right? Which gives them the overall sound, a much bigger sound. Now, with that said, had size been no object, then obviously the Fender Rumble 25 or even the 40, right, gives you a much bigger bass sound, but the trade-off is the bass amps are much larger, right? I mean, even the 25 I thought was kind of big for a little coffee house gig, where you're playing at low volume levels to begin with, so the little Fender Rumble 15 is perfect for that. Now I did find that with the Rumble 25 and the 40, which have bigger speakers in them, you get a much bigger, lower sounding bass sound, and it sounds more like a bass. I think, if you were going strictly for the sound of the bass, obviously I would recommend the 25 or the 40, right? One is 25 watts, one is 40 watts, and much bigger. But the little 15 is decent as far as reproducing bass sounds. In context of playing little tiny tube amps. I mean, it'll still fill out a room just fine. And it's quite amazing when you turn it off and you go, oh my gosh, where did the sound go? And you hear just the little tube heads, it sounds pretty weak. But with these tube amps, and I really like the Fender Rumble series. One, the amps are super light to carry around, so perfect for that coffee house gig where you don't want to bring a ton of equipment. And the little 15 watters do great. Second, the price, of course. Not bad for what you get. I mean, for under $100, $89, I think it was. Okay, granted, $89 plus tax. Okay, but you've also got easy pay. If that helps. So I'm really thrilled with it, and it's quite small, enough. I found the 25 was quite large, but what a great sound, though. So there you go, and it makes such a huge difference in sound. To be honest with you, I'd be kind of disappointed with the little Bugera heads just by themselves, but when you add the bass amp, makes all the difference in the world. Anyway, something to consider. And that same concept of the subwoofer and satellite can be done with larger amps as well, I mean, the 40 watt Fender Rumble is quite loud, it can be quite loud, even though it's only 40 watts. And the bass response is fantastic. And when you add that with a 22 watt tube amp, full size tube amp, wow, the sound is quite huge, right? Anyway, something to maybe try and see if it improves if you've got a little small amp that you're kind of disappointed in, right? Sound wise, try one of these, adding a bass amp to it, and you can use either a crossover or an A/B switch, or even a Y splitter, just to plug it into two different amps, right? It's quite amazing. Yeah, you can take a little tiny amp and make it sound like a big amp. It's got that full sound to it. Whereas I found the Bugeras by themselves, even through a 12-inch cabinet, sounded kind of small. So this really makes a huge difference. Alright, very good. See you next time. Okay.